Welcome, everyone, to 97%'s second annual conference. This year, we're talking about what's next in looking at innovative solutions to reducing gun-related deaths. Despite the pandemic and a number of economic and social issues that we face, gun violence remains one of the most intractable problems in America. Gun violence now tops car accidents as one of the top causes of death for children. Mass shootings continue to devastate our nation, while gun-related deaths in 2021 were the highest in the last 3 decades. And in 2022, over 38,000 lives have been lost this year to date, including school and campus shootings as recently as last week. All the while, both our citizens and our elected officials are entrenched by the myth of irresolvable conflict around a path to meaningful gun violence reduction. But it's just that. It's a myth. 97% was founded to bring both sides into the conversation, both gun owners and non-gun owners, to find common ground and to find practical solutions to the gun violence epidemic in America. We have conducted extensive research with gun owners and others. We've done surveys, focus groups, discussions with organizations that are both gun rights organizations and gun safety organizations. And we're going to discuss some of the results of that research today. We found clear common ground in the nearly universal desire to keep firearms out of the hands of those with a history of violence. And we're going to go into some detail on this today, but effectively our laws today do not prevent people with a history of violence, certainly not all of them, from accessing firearms. And we're going to talk about a clear path to be able to solve that. In fact, this afternoon, we're going to share a 97% evidence-based policy roadmap for dramatically reducing gun deaths. We have with us today Dr. Michael Siegel, who's going to talk about the research that he's conducted and the analysis of the many different policies and laws that have been proposed to present our view of what the most focused approach can be to reducing gun violence and gun-related deaths with the minimum number of changes to the law, and in fact, with policies that allow us to get support from both sides. There has been, quite frankly, an incorrect belief that this is a very contentious area, and you're going to hear the research. We've published some of this research already, that the reality is people almost universally agree to what the solutions are. And in fact, there's not a big conflict on the two sides. It's one of the areas where Americans agree most, quite frankly, not one of our most contentious issues, but rather a place of very significant agreement. And so we're going to work and talk specifically about things we can do to be effective on that front. Before then and throughout the conference, you're going to hear not only from researchers, but also from advocates and elected officials and innovators who are working on approaches to improving gun safety. And there's some really exciting things that are happening that we want to talk about today. There are approaches that have been tried for many years, but there are several new approaches to improving gun safety overall. To kick us off, we are honored to have Governor Roy Cooper, the governor of North Carolina since 2016. Governor Cooper has served the state of North Carolina since 1987 in various positions, and maybe most notably before being governor as Attorney General for the state, with 4 terms as Attorney General before being elected governor. Governor Cooper has been an ardent proponent of stronger measures to curb gun violence in North Carolina and across the nation, and yet has remained a defender of the Second Amendment in what most of us would agree is a very purple state. So we're very excited to hear from Governor Cooper, and we thank you for joining us today and excited for a great conference. Governor Cooper, over to you.
Well, thanks, Adam, and thanks 97% for your amazing work. I too believe that we can find our way to progress. I'm going to begin by being pretty blunt because this topic needs that. Last week, I was talking with some emergency room physicians about gun violence and its effect on young people. That discussion was passionate and jarring. One doctor said to me, putting pressure on a gaping bullet wound in a 4-year-old changes your life. Another one said, there's a wail a mother makes when you tell her that her wounded child has died. It's a sound that is distinct and soul crushing. I so wish I never have to hear it again. I tell you, I'm rarely at a loss for words, but I was then. Just last month, I talked with and tried to comfort some of the families and friends of the 5 victims who were killed in a mass shooting in Raleigh on October 13th. My words and prayers may have been of some comfort, but they wanted more. They were angry. They wanted justice, and they wanted to keep it from happening again. That's where you come in. That's where we all come in. I appreciate this opportunity to share my perspective on this effort to curb deadly gun violence that's rapidly on the rise. And I applaud the approach of 97%, because finding a way to deal with the other 3% is crucial. Finding research and evidence-based solutions that can persuade policymakers, and maybe more importantly, the 3% who obviously have their ear, is a matter of life and death. The common ground this group seeks is there. We just need to find ways to get it done. And that's what you're going to be talking about today. It's obvious, and we've said this, the vast majority of people in North Carolina and the United States support reasonable steps to help keep guns from people who shouldn't have them. Violent criminals, young children, people who are a danger to themselves and others. And there are solutions to help us do that. More comprehensive background checks, red flag laws, and efforts to cajole and encourage more responsible gun ownership. These policies are wildly popular with the people. Yet there are a lot of lawmakers who are hesitant. Why do you label it gun violence? They say to me. Violence is violence, whether a gun is used or not. The best answer to a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Guns aren't the problem. People are, they tell me. I hear them. I get that argument. But let's think about it this way. Car accidents used to be, as Adam said, the #1 cause of injury deaths of young people in the United States. Cars aren't evil in and of themselves. yet they can be instruments of death for young people. So we took common sense steps to make our highways safer, tougher laws, mandatory seatbelts, airbags, and requirements for safer cars all contributed to bringing down the number of children and people dying on our highways. Take North Carolina, for example. In 1960, we had about 27 traffic deaths per 100,000 people. 40 years later, after changes in our laws, that number dropped to 16. Today, it's no longer car accidents. Now, the number one cause of injury, death for young people is being shot by a gun. The government didn't take the cars away from responsible drivers, and we won't take away guns from responsible owners. We just want to make it safer. And all of us want to feel safe in our houses, our schools, our churches, and in our communities. That's our common ground. But now many of us are angry and frustrated that most reasonable steps to improve gun safety haven't become law. I commend the progress made this past year in Congress with the new bipartisan Safer Communities Act. 97% made a real difference in that success, and we're all grateful for your good work. But we know that much more is needed. Our biggest obstacle is the 3% that has money and power. The NRA and other gun groups spend heavily in elections, both against those who oppose them and for those who follow their agenda. Our job is to find solutions that work and to convince legislators, members of Congress, policymakers that not only are those proposals the right thing to do, they're also the smart thing to do, both politically and for the people they represent. The majority of gun owners are responsible, and we have to come together to keep guns out of the hands of those who aren't. Too many children are accidentally shot through carelessness and ignorance. Too many people use guns to commit suicide, while too many young people lie bleeding in the streets from bullets that come from guns that are far too easy for other kids to get. Laws that protect due process can be put in place while we give judges more authority to keep guns from those who are threatening violence to themselves or others. Criminals can be better screened with more comprehensive background checks. And gun owners can and need to be more responsible. The number of people buying guns has skyrocketed in the last couple of years, and many of them lack knowledge about or experience with gun ownership. We can help with that. And it needs to be an all-in team effort. We're pushing forward with a firearms safe storage campaign, even though legislation funding it stalled. For those of us who own guns, it's our responsibility to keep them safe and out of the wrong hands. Look, I've used my veto stamp to stop legislation that would loosen gun laws. Under my order, we made background checks stronger by adding hundreds of thousands of criminal charges into the system. I've convened meetings with police, sheriffs, prosecutors, mayors, federal law enforcement, health professionals, doctors, gun safety advocates, and crime victims to work on solutions. And I've directed millions of dollars into mental health first aid for young people, so teachers and school staff are trained on warning signs and how to help. But there's so much left to do. Congress, policymakers, our state legislatures must act. And 97% needs to keep working with policymakers to keep the 3% from successfully stoking the unfounded fear that the government is coming for our guns. We're not. We respect the Second Amendment. We respect our right to own a gun, just like we respect our right to drive a car. It just has to be safer. It's too easy to grab a gun and use it to maim or kill, intentionally or not. It's time for real action. It's time to come together. It's time that the will of the 97% comes to pass. Together, we can make it so. Thanks a lot and have a great conference. I look forward to the report.